Hello, my name is Bob Brown, and it's my privilege to host this show, which is based on the reality that Westborough is a great town filled with interesting people. Many of them are long-term residents who have so many memories and stories about life in Westborough in days gone past. And so your local cable station, Westborough TV, has initiated this series of programs which are designed to reflect upon life in earlier days and to possibly make suggestions about how we can improve life in this fine town for the future. All right, this is another edition of My Westborough Story, and tonight we're going to introduce to you Lenny Hutt, who will introduce all the fellows who are with him tonight, who will explain what we're doing here tonight.
Well, thanks, Bob. Why don't I start with the introductions? We'll just work our way right around. First, in a complete World War II uniform is Jerry Rivard. Jerry helps out a lot with all kinds of different missions, whether it's to go get paint, to help with sandblasting, just anything that we ask the sergeant, he's ready and willing and able to do. And Jerry has a particular passion for some of the uniforms and different accessories. I'm wearing tonight a World War II belt, and all of the accessories on here are accessories that Jerry has accumulated and picked up over a period of time. The uniform that Jerry is wearing tonight, some of that was donated by the Tidman family. When Walter Tidman passed away, I believe well, Jerry, why don't you tell us, what are you wearing that's Walter?
The coat is Walter Tidman's, and the pants are Walter Tidman's. Great. And I passed on the boots I gave to Lenny Hutt, because they didn't quite fit me, you know. And he also got the one of the shirts, you know. This shirt underneath the jacket is of the period, and it's a World War II. And I picked it up intact. The only thing I added was a CIB, which is your combat infantry badge. Yeah. I am a combat veteran. Are these your medals, or no? These are African Corps is the brown on the end, and these are Pacific Theater and the Victory Theater. And this is seeing I drive a 1951. Korea Jeep. I added the Korea campaign medal. You know, I mean, I have my own medals, but they're updated. I can't wear them on this uniform. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's I try to keep intact.
So those are Walter's medals. That's great.
Yes. You know.
Great.
Well, to my right is a gentleman that he would never brag about his credentials. But the fact of the matter is that this guy has been restoring World War II memorabilia for over 40 years, vehicles, and was kind of a pioneer in New England restoring Jeeps, motorcycles. Sherman tank, I believe, is one of the things that he worked on. He's a lifelong mechanic, and when we took this project on, which we can talk more about later, one of the pledges, each person kind of said, I'll help with different things. And John stepped forward and said, I will be the lead mechanic for this truck. That's why it's at his house. And he's taken the headship of all of the mechanical systems on that truck. This is John Mulcahy.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, John. We'll talk to you in just a minute.
All right. Next is a familiar face in the Westborough school system. An avid collector of World War II memorabilia, and the owner of a Jeep for, I believe, almost 26 years. He's well known in the educational system of Westborough. He worked at Westborough High School for how many years, John? 34 years. John Watson. John is an avid Jeep person, and he's just concluding his MB. It's not here tonight, but when you come back to visit us, I'm sure it will be in the crowd. The last man over there on the far left is a local contractor, a friend of mine. He kind of grew up in our household. He was adopted in. Jeremy's always been interested in whatever was happening in my shop. And quite frankly, my World War II Jeep languished in its restoration. And part of the reason was that I just didn't have any camaraderie. And facing an entire restoration myself was just overwhelming. And a year ago, Jeremy said, I will help you. I will be there every night. And so I was inspired. And Jeremy Newt is the young man's name, and he's worked with us in restoring my vehicle, and we're looking forward to him working on the CCKW. That's a truck in front of you. So that's our little crew.
And I'm going to introduce Polly Howard, who has worked with us on several of the other shows. Good friend, loves military stuff. So she's come along to be part of this little gathering tonight.
I grew up with trucks. My father had a garage, and I was always there. And worked during World War II. I worked in the garage. My sister and I, we did grease jobs, changed the oil, spark plugs, whatever had to be done. Dad wouldn't let us touch truck tires, but other than that, why, we did about everything. It was fun. I still like trucks.
Good to have you, Polly. All right, Lenny, why don't we go around and let's start with whatever vehicle you want to tell us about first.
Well, I'll tell you what.
All you guys, when you have something to say, just let me know.
We've got 3 Jeeps tonight and a CCKW. We can do a quick Jeep tour. John is the absolute guru of these Jeeps and has forgotten more about all of them than I can tell you. So maybe I'll let John walk you through the 3 different Jeeps that are here.
All right, let's take a walk up to the first Jeep. That's Lenny's. That's a 1942 Willys. It's quite an early model. It's got some interesting features. For one, I don't know if you can see it, but the first 6 months of production only, the Willys name was branded in the tailboard. And this Jeep has the name branded in, embossed. And after 6 months, they eliminated that as an extra chore. Let's save some time. And they stopped, that's what we call scripting the Jeep.
John, what year did you say this one was?
This is a 1942, May, I believe. So it's early on. And another unique feature of this Jeep is on the inside, between the 2 seats, there's a 12-volt generator mounted under that cover. It's driven off the power takeoff behind the transmission by a belt. And since these Jeeps were originally 6-volt equipped from the factory, they had to have some way to power the 12-volt radios. So they put a 12-volt generator between the seats, drove it off the power takeoff on the transmission, and that's how they got around the problem. Later on, they came out with a complete 12-volt kit to convert the entire Jeep over to 12 volts like a modern thing. And, of course, that worked out a lot better, but this was one of the early ways to get around that problem. So this Jeep, of course, has been in Lenny's hands for many, many years, since high school, I guess. And he had a lot of fun using it over the years. And finally, it was getting a little tired. So he put it up and was going to go through the whole thing. And as he said, he was kind of alone in the project. It was a little overwhelming. And it took quite a few years before everyone decided, come on, let's get going. And all last winter and up through the spring, we worked, sandblasted, primed, painted, rebuilt engines and drivetrain and everything. And here it sits today, ready to go. Oh, yes.
It's no aftermarket stuff. This is all...
Yep, this is all original equipment. You know, you have to search the junkyards and the surplus places, friends, acquaintances. And it's a chore sometimes to dig up those little widgets that you need to make it correct. But if you look long and hard enough, you'll find them. As a matter of fact, when we get to Jeep number 2, I'll go into that a little bit also.
Good. Why don't we do that? Why don't we head down there? That's beautiful.
Now this Jeep, which is mine, is a 1943 Ford. Some people don't realize that Ford also built Jeeps during World War II. They were built to the same specification as the Willys. All the parts were interchangeable. But Henry Ford, being the vain person that he was, had to make sure that when you were in a Ford Jeep, you knew it. So just about every single part on the Jeep has an F stamped in it somewhere. Yeah. And as an example, you can see a little F stamped in the fender right here.
Wow.
There's an F on the back of the radiator. Here's a nice F right up here.
Oh, Henry.
The bolts, all the bolts have Fs on the heads. So he wanted to make sure that when you were driving the Jeep and it was his, you knew it.
Did you have a hard time finding parts for this?
It's very difficult to find original Ford parts because all the collectors grab them up. Only a certain amount were made. And the common parts aren't too hard, but sometimes the little bracket or the secret bolt, very difficult. You've got to find 2 or 3 Jeeps just to get that one thing you need sometimes. So it's a lot of fun trying to restore a Ford Jeep, but of course, when you're done, it's well worth it. And this one is also a little unique in the fact that it has a capstan winch on the front. That was a late World War II addition. And rather than being driven off a transmission power takeoff, it's actually driven off the front of the crankshaft. And
That was just used to haul you out?
haul you out, yep. Or to hopefully haul somebody else out if they got stuck. And the other unique feature on this Jeep is this engine-mounted air compressor. This is a very hard-to-find accessory. And when the Jeeps were used in rough terrain and maybe had to lower the pressure in the tires to go through sand or muck, it was very difficult to refill them again, so they came out with this compressor kit, and he could take care of himself and any of the vehicles around him. So this one is not quite finished yet, but very, very close. This is probably 90% original stuff and a few aftermarket items, but reproduced to the Ford spec. And if you notice the license plate on the back, it says GPW, and that is the model of the Jeep. The Willys Jeep is what they call an MB, and the Ford Jeep is a GPW. So I was rather lucky to get that plate. And of course we have the obligatory pretended rifle on the windshield. And over here, the final Jeep.
Yeah, I want to tell you a little bit about this one.
I'll go through a little bit, and then you can take over if you like.
Go ahead.
This is a 1951 M38. This would be correct for the Korean War vintage. And as you can see, Jerry's got it all spiffed up. He's got the rope on the front, radio gear in the back, trailer, all the accessories you could probably want for this Jeep. So he's a little bit proud of that. And as we just found out, this used to belong to our friend Bob Brown, who might like to say a few words about it.
For my kids, so they have a chance to see what a Jeep really looks like. We bought this Jeep from a junkie over in Clinton. It came out of the water down at Newport, Rhode Island. They hauled it up, brought it home. It had to be fixed up, obviously, put a new motor in it. The body was in terrible shape, and eventually the body just broke in half. So the next move was to go with Howdy Ullman up to Fort Devens, where he bought a Jeep, and we bought another body and brought it home and stuck it in my garage, and we put that one on. Now, I would assume, Jerry, this is not the same body. This must be another one.
This is the one that you passed on.
Is it? Yeah. Wow, you did a remarkable job. But I was telling the folks on the way over that one of the family jokes is that whenever we had 5 kids, and whenever my wife was pregnant and getting close to the end, the kids would say, I think it's time for a Jeep ride, Dad, and we'd take Mom out, and within 20 minutes the baby came popping out.
When I go to a show, I put out a huge display, and it's all, I set out a cot, and I was just telling Paulie about that. I set out a cot, and at one end of the cot is display, the middle is display, and this end is display. And it's all about, showing the people. It's not about me. Believe me, it's not about me. I'm lucky. I made it home. Now it's the education was the word I was looking for. It's the education. I had a woman pick up that German helmet 2 years ago at one of the shows, and she said, "Oh, I never knew helmets were this heavy." Well, now here's my education part for her. And it's not to stop a bullet. It's not going to stop a bullet. It'll stop shrapnel, or a good ricochet of a bullet. But no, I come from the heart that I'm able to display a lot of memorabilia, and I've been collecting since I was a kid, so it gives me great pleasure to display, and that's what I go out to try to acquire. I'm always out looking for something different, something new to add to the display. There's a lot of people give me compliments, and I'm very proud of it. A few years ago, I was hosted Thanksgiving dinner, and we had a place setting. My wife is a roamer in town. She comes from a large family, 11 kids, mother and father, and they've passed on, but we still host Thanksgiving dinner, and we had 33 place settings, and of the 33, 32 showed up.
Wow.
Who do you think was missing? Thank you.
I'm not going to guess.
I was up at Green Hill Park,
Oh, you were.
and I was at the memorial and this was about 4 years ago, I think, And at that memorial, I happened to read one of these stones that are up there, and it was a Thanksgiving Day letter. And of course, that Marine didn't make it home, and neither did I. You know, it took me 5 hours to get away from that stone. Yeah.
Very emotional. There's a lot of emotion with all this stuff. This was not fun stuff. We treat it as fun now, but it was real serious business. Go in the
Well,
water?
on this particular Jeep, this Jeep was 24 volts, and they made a considerable number of improvements from the World War II to this Korean Jeep. They started producing these in 1946. And that Jeep, the electronics on that Jeep are completely sealed. There's a little adapter kit, and that Jeep can just drive through water with no problem at all. There's a tube that runs up the side of the window, and it's able to get fresh air, and the exhaust goes up a parallel tube. So fording a river was no problem. The World War II Jeep, they did make a kit, but it was very crude, and it was very likely that the distributor would get wet and the Jeep wouldn't quite make it across. And that brings us over to a truck that would pull the Jeep out. Just a quick background on how it came to be. These things have come in and out of service with the United States government. After World War II, the World War II pieces that you've seen tonight stopped being used by our government. We had an excess of them. Most of them, like your Jeep, found their way at the bottom of the drink. The majority of them found themselves being given to other countries, particularly Europe, that needed to be rebuilt. That was the case with the large truck that's now under restoration. It's called a CCKW. I'll let John give you more detail about the particulars of this truck, but the Jeeps were the backbone of transportation and forward-moving vehicles. All kinds of little daily tasks that needed some 2 or 3 people to get from point A to point B. It was the job of the Jeep. The Jeep was also their forward reconnaissance vehicle. John told you a little bit about the radio and needing a generator to communicate in an early 6-volt Jeep. Well, the field commanders recognized right away that the Jeep was the first vehicle out and the farthest out, and we had no way to communicate with it. So we needed to update the Jeep even from its early manufacture. This truck, the CCKW, was the backbone of the transportation arm of the United States Army as well as the Army Air Force. It moved men, equipment, arms, all the materials that are necessary to conduct war. This truck is the primary vehicle that transported all of that equipment during World War II. John, you want to come on over and you can walk them through a little bit more of the detail of the truck. We came to own the truck because Mr. Mulcahy became aware that a collector had left the truck outside, had purchased, I believe, 5 vehicles, and he had to buy all 5 to get one that he really wanted. This was not one of the ones that he really wanted. So it got set aside and started to deteriorate. John contacted me and asked me if I would be willing to consider purchasing the truck, and some of the other folks that you've met tonight were all anxious to work on it. And so we kind of formalized our relationship into a unit that was able to get a task this size done. John, you want to come on over and you can talk a little bit more about the truck and the process that you go through with any restoration, not just this truck in particular, but because of the sheer size and magnitude of it, it's amplified. Thanks, John.
Well, as you can tell just by looking at this truck, it's about 2.5 times Jeep size anyway. Everything on it is massive. Look at the brake drums, the springs, the size of the chassis, the drive shafts, the front and the rear ends. Everything is big but the engine. And consequently, this behemoth of a truck would be lucky to turn maybe 40 to 45 miles an hour on the highway. But of course, back then they didn't care. They just had to move the goods from point A to point B, a lot of times cross country where the roads were next to nil. So high speed wasn't their priority. But nowadays, when we want to take it out and play, you have to plan on extra hours in your trip. But that's okay because that's part of the mystique of this big old thing.
And the tanker following.
Yes, they might be lucky to get 5.5, 6 miles to the gallon on a good day. So, of course, it's a lot of fun trying to drive one of these things. They have a non-synchronized gearbox, so you have to double clutch every time you shift. And they seem to have a very big aversion to hills, even slight ones. And you have to shift down probably 2 gears anyway to get up the hill. You might be topping 20 miles an hour at the top, and then you can coast down and maybe hit 40. But they did an awful lot of work, and they were extremely rugged, very dependable trucks. The backbone of the Army, of course, moving everything that you can imagine. And so we just had to have this thing. This one has a winch in the front. A little hard to see right now because it's covered up, but that's one of the good selling points. You can get yourself out of some sticky spots. Of course, you can help pull other people out at the same time. And so far, we've managed to completely strip all the sheet metal, the bed, tires, wheels, and stuff. We've sandblasted the chassis, the running gear, primed and painted, so the chassis you see here now is ready for everything else to get put back on top of it. Well, the first thing we did was to strip everything off. First off came the big bed on the back. Lenny got a forklift out here, and we stuck the forks underneath the bed, lifted that off. Then, of course, the fuel tank came out. Then the front fenders, the grill, the hood, the running boards. Then the cab disassembled into many parts. We found out there's about 540 bolts that hold the front end and the cab together. It was a complete bolt-together, take-apart item. Very good for servicing. So once we got it stripped down to the chassis, then we power washed everything and got most of the grime and the grunge off. Then sandblasted the chassis, painted the whole thing with red oxide primer, and then put a couple of coats of green on it, World War II olive drab. And we just took the tires, which had the rims all sandblasted and painted over behind the tent here, took them down to the truck store and got them balanced. So that will help the drivability a little bit. And next up is to take all the small body parts. They're all sandblasted and primed. We just have to do a little bit of body work here and there, paint them up, put them back on. We have the engine covered because we don't want any naughty rain getting in there. But my next project is to strip the engine down, clean it all up, paint it the proper colors, put all the accessories back on. And once that happens, we can put the cab back on. We have a brand new entire wiring harness for the truck, so we won't have any short circuits going on as we drive. And hopefully, the next time we see you folks, we'll have a little bit more progress to show you, and maybe you can even hear it run.
Well, I did hear it run. Lenny brought me up here, and he said, you won't believe this. He hopped in the thing and started, boom, started.
Oh, yes, it did.
Remarkable.
Yeah, when we first bought the truck, it hadn't run in several years. It had no brakes. So we had to do a little fooling around with the engine, put a battery in, get some gas up to it, clean the points and a few other things. And, geez, lo and behold, it fired right up and sounded pretty good. We added brake fluid because there was none in there. We pumped up the brakes. They worked. The generator didn't work. We had no charge. We had no headlights. We fooled around with that a little bit. Got the thing to charge, and by then it was, dusk or so. And
this is your trip, your famous trip back.
Yes, yeah. We had a license plate with us. So I said, well, it runs and it's got lights. Let's drive it home. So we took a midnight run, first drive it had in I don't know how many years, and it just purred like a kitty all the way home. It was just delightful. No problems other than the horn going off when it wasn't supposed to. But we took care of that, and we got it home in one piece, and everybody was happy. What a thrill it was.
And you even passed by a cop who didn't bother you, right?
That's right. We passed a state trooper with the horn going toot, toot, toot. So I just waved at him, and he thought we were saying hi, and he let us go. So it was quite an adventure for the first trip. The grin on our faces was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And, of course, for me, I'm sort of a World War II history buff, and I also enjoy antique cars of any type. So to combine antique military vehicles along with the history is perfect for me. I love it to death. And everything that we do, every piece that we finish, is not only a little pride for us, but of course it's a dedication to all those wonderful men that went before us and made our country what it is today. It's a memorial to them more than anything else.
Now that we've had a tour of the vehicles, why don't you give us some input about what your plans for these things are?
Sure, thanks, Bob. In an effort to preserve the history and pass some of that legacy on to other generations, as Jerry mentioned, we really relish the opportunity to have displays, static displays. My Jeep has been in the town's parade for, I don't know, 25 or 30 years. And now we've got other Jeeps that are being added one at a time. And so that's a way to help people remember. The vets have a huge appreciation for what we're doing. But we hope to do more in an educational sense, whether it's going to schools or different functions. But one of the things that we are really hoping to advance is a service for veterans as they pass away. We have plans to convert one of the trailers into a caisson so that if a family is desirous of having their loved one that's passed away taken to a cemetery or from a church to another location, we'll donate the Jeep, a trailer. Probably the big truck will also be involved in that process too, Bob, so that if the military service was important and our being there is a comfort to that family, we're going to provide that service at no charge. And they'll be able to contact their undertaker. They can talk to him about it, and we'll give you some contact information. Also in Westborough, our veterans agent, we're talking with him now about getting that program off the ground. And so with different Jeeps, different drivers, no one person is going to be overtaxed in providing that service. But we think that that's really a good way to honor the memory of those guys. We're going to start with World War II because we realized we could get inundated with requests, and we're losing World War II vets right now at about 300 plus a day in the United States, and that process isn't going to go too many more years. So we want to get a chance to honor those men and hopefully be an encouragement to their families as well. So that's something that we're going to do, but it helps to keep those memories alive, and it allows people to see the real equipment that was used. So that's certainly one of the things that we're really hoping to get started with. We appreciate you giving us this opportunity to do that. Another thing that we are, if I can, that we're hoping to do is as these veterans are dying, we're hearing more and more stories about their uniforms turning up in the trash or the Salvation Army or the rag donation container. And we would really welcome the opportunity to take those World War II pieces of clothing, the medals. This sidearm, by the way, for the Westborough audience, was donated by Lieutenant Campion's son for the purpose of being able to be displayed. And it's a 1945, a military .45. So, in the Tidmans we mentioned earlier. So we would welcome any kind of World War II equipment of almost any kind, uniforms, clothing, boots, armament. One of the things we're hoping to do with this truck, and the collecting part is going to be very expensive, but we're hoping to arm the truck with the armaments that would have been on it at the time. And that's any help we can get in any of these endeavors is very, very welcome. And people can know that it's the things that they are able to give us. It's not for our personal betterment. It's really that we can pass this on. It's almost like a rolling historical society. So that's our hope.
And I hope it can be interpreted that way. I think a lot of people, they see a military vehicle in a parade, think this is a very militaristic country. I don't think that's the issue at all. This is to remember why we're free and to honor the folks who wrote in these things originally and to say this is what it's all about. It's our responsibility to keep this country free, and these men did it, and these vehicles helped do it. So that's what it's about. So it's to honor, not to parade and not to be pompous.
That's right. It means a lot to them, Bob. I think we started to talk a little bit, but we've had veterans come up, and I personally had one experience where a man came up and set his hands on the hood of the Jeep and started to sob. He recognized what it was, and in World War II, those little Jeeps were used as stretcher bearers. They were able to stack 6 men in cots. And for that man, that Jeep is etched in his memory as the last time he saw 6 of his closest comrades. And none of them returned. Another man that I've shared this story with you privately, there's a fellow in our town that was an officer, a Navy officer, and he absconded with an Army Jeep, painted it Navy colors, and he and his buddy were able to take regular excursions when their ship came into port because they had their own private little Jeep. So when that man sees the Jeep, he laughs. So each man has a story, but these vehicles seem to trigger memories for them, and that's precious. Some of them, those memories have been bottled up for 60 years. Yeah.
We're very happy for this opportunity to talk to you, and we're very interested in restoring and emphasizing the historical significance of these vehicles, and we hope to get the younger generation involved. They love just to go for a ride.
Absolutely.
And while they're riding, we sort of tell them what they're all about. So it's easy to get them in there, and once they're a captive audience going 30 miles an hour, we know they're not going to jump out. So we give them the history. So we appreciate your coming here and letting us talk.
I was going to point out, this comes from Major Healy, and Healy's on, I was talking to his daughter. I'm not sure if they passed on or not, but this must be his parachute. That's Normandy.
Wow.
You know, and that's a piece of his, oh, excuse me. Yeah. Now that Major Healy, she ended up selling me his hat with the Major emblem and this, and she said there was 2 of these, and I have the camouflage one, and I also have his name, and they're on, I believe, Church Street. No, they were down on School Street, and his name is Major Healy. That was his money belt. Wow. And it was nice of her to, you know, it was a flea market. She had all kinds of display, and I asked if she had anything military. Oh, I have some. I have a star in the house, and she come out with the Major insignia. You know, so I mean, I have cue cards at home, which are recipe cards, and I jot down this, you know, who it's from, and that I'll keep it, you know, so that I won't forget, you know. But I was and I display this piece of parachute, you know, that's Normandy. Wow. So he must have jumped with the chute and then turned it into a kerchief for his wife, you know. And of the 2 of them, she said, well, maybe I should keep one. I said, yes, you really should keep one, you know. And I'm real proud that when I go to the shows, you know, I display this, you know. Absolutely. You know. My own Foot Locker at home, I use it for extras, but this is my wife's father's Foot Locker, and that's dated on the inside, 1943.
Wow,
you know.
look at that.
And I found it when we were emptying the house on Church Street, that it was on end with a couple boards against the wall. And I'm looking at it saying, this looks like a Foot Locker, and I took the boards off, you know, and then I found out, I said, this is your father's Foot Locker, and out of the 11 kids, none of them really wanted it. And I said, I know what to do with it. So I have more fun displaying this, you know. And and this here's my son. That's about 2 months ago. And he's getting his promotional, he got not E4, he got 3rd class petty officer. He's in the Navy. Great. You know, he's over in Japan. Great. And that's 2.5 years, and he turned E4. I'm real proud of him. Yeah, you know, yes.
Well, you've managed to put together a collection that helps people understand what the war was all about and what the men did who served us. They're a tough bunch to get to talk. They're hard to get much out of them. So the more we can draw them out with things like this, the better it is.
Yes.
Anybody, any final words?
So I mean, I kind of joined this group about a year ago when we really started working on Lenny's Jeep, and you know, I, as somebody who been so far from World War II, my parents were not in World War II, my grandparents were. So this has been a huge learning experience for me to go through, learn about the Jeeps, but learn about the war, learn about the people in the service, all the people in town that have been involved. it's been an incredible process to go through, and to also to hands-on be able to touch the equipment that they use, and to really, it helps you really understand physically what they had to deal with, and it just gives you it really gives you perspective to see all that, and to see all these different vehicles, and get to know all these different people, and see all these guys in their uniforms. It's quite an experience, and it's been great to be part of it. So
I'd like to bring out Al Jeff's name. He's been working down a cemetery. I work for DPW, and my job is actually Pine Grove, and Al Jeff's been down there for 4 years. So when he passed away a couple months ago, I said I'd go to the wake, and I dressed up World War II, and they were so happy to see me come in World War II clothing that they asked me to come with the Jeep, and they asked me to come to his funeral the following day. Well, the following day, I opened up the Jeep for family members, and I'm real proud to say that I got two of I think it was the great-grandkids were in the back seat, and I think the son-in-law was in the passenger seat. And so I was right behind the funeral, the head car, and he was a tremendous loss, I felt, when he died, because of the knowledge that he had. He was a tank commander, and I believe it was a Hellcat tank, and he was awesome just for the knowledge that he knew. He told me one story, I'm not repeating it, but he just started opening up to his daughter. I believe her name was Christina. He had gone to her school and was telling him stories, and I'm glad that I talked to Christina and got that knowledge out of it, because like I say, it was a tremendous loss to have that person, what he knew and the stories he could tell of World War II, and a lot of these people that are dying haven't told their stories, and we're losing a lot of history. I mean, I feel just honored. It's not about me, believe me. It's not about me. It's the education that I try to bring forth, and bring out to the public.
Well, I want to thank all you guys. John, would you want to say something?
No.
Okay. I want to thank all of you for putting up with us this evening and making this show possible. We finally beat the rain.
Yes.
We've had 3 cancellations
The
so
Lord
far.
was with us.
Tonight he was. That's right. So thank you very much.
Bob. Thank you very much for helping to bring this to the community's attention.
I thank you for 2 reasons.
Polly's going to drive in the spring, so stay tuned. Don't touch that dial.
We're going to show you this when it's finished. So this is not a completed program yet. But all right, Tim, thank you very much.